Good morning, guys. Welcome to Midweek Moment. This week we were in Mark chapter 11, and it was a good week for us. We got to talk about some of my favorite stories, and my sons were asking some pretty good questions. So we were talking about when Jesus tells his disciples to go get the donkeys, and of course I got to ask my sons, like, hey, if I told you to go into town and to just go grab something, but if somebody stops you and asks you, just tell them, hey, it's okay. This is for the Lord. What do you think the chances are of that person being okay with it? And of course, their eyes got big, and they were like, yeah, probably not. But then my son was asking, he's like, Dad, why was it a donkey? And that was a cool moment for me because I love seeing where things of the Old Testament and prophecies of the Old Testament and Jesus perfectly fulfills them. And in Zechariah 9, as the prophet Zechariah is talking about this Messiah, this one that's going to come, in Zechariah 9:9, this is what it says. It says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey." And it's talking about, it's got this higher language of righteousness and salvation. And you expect this person to come in on a chariot, on a flame, on a horse, or on something. And it's no, he comes humble, and he comes on a donkey that had never been ridden before, wasn't trained, but was set apart for this. And it was prophesied of 500 years beforehand. So when I got to talk about that with my sons and the way that scriptures points to something that's perfectly going to be fulfilled in Jesus, it was just a good way to start our devotion about it this week. So that's something you guys can use. You guys can point back to Zechariah. Tony had something completely different with his time this week.
Yeah, so I want to reflect on the fact that what DJ is talking about here is the triumphal entry. Jesus entering the city of Jerusalem, and the people think that he's going to be their conquering hero. And it's interesting to me that the common mindset of the day probably would have been more along the lines of conquering the Roman Empire. And one of the first things that happens after Jesus makes his triumphal entry is he goes to the temple, and he does what could be perceived as an attack against the religion of Judaism in the temple. And so there's got to be this level of confusion that happens. Like, wait a minute. I thought you were going to overthrow the Roman government, and now it looks like you're working to subvert our religion. And so there's a level of confusion there that I just found to be an interesting observation that I'd never really observed chronologically before as I've read through that. But the thing that came up as a question stems from this mantra that we have in our house. And we've got a lot of mantras that we use that just kind of like help us frame our mindsets in different situations. But one of them that we use regularly is simply this: we control our emotions. We don't let our emotions control us. And that helps that helps us in moments where we're frustrated, or we're sad, or we're angry, we're tired, right? And so we say we got to control our emotions. And so the question comes up, when Jesus is cleansing the temple, why is it okay that he's angry, and does his anger start to control him? And I think that's a very, very good question. Because sometimes the way that we talk about anger, the way that we talk about emotion, we can think, or we can teach in such a way that all anger is perceived as a negative emotion, and that's not the case. There is a place for anger, and there is such a thing as righteous anger, and we see Jesus displaying righteous anger there. No, Jesus was not letting his emotions control him. He was in control of his emotions, but the fact of the situation was it required dramatic effort in that moment to make things right. So I had a little bit of a conversation with my kids about the things that made Jesus mad, because this isn't the only time in scripture that Jesus got mad. And so just to convey a couple of those things to you, Jesus got mad when people were denied access to God. We see that here in the cleansing of the temple. We see Jesus get mad when religious hypocrisy was a stumbling block shock for people. We see Jesus get mad when the needy are not helped. Okay, and so we see Jesus get mad when judgmentalism takes the place of compassion. Okay, so these things consistently make Jesus mad in Scripture, and that's a righteous anger. And so we started to have this conversation about like, well, how might those things look in our lives? And so I'd encourage you to ask that question. What are some times when it's appropriate to get angry? If you see a kid getting picked on the playground, right? That's not supposed to be something that we're okay with. There should be something in us as followers of Jesus that registers that's not right. How we handle it is another conversation, because you going up and slugging them in the face is probably not going to be a good solution. But it's not something that should register as okay with us, okay? And so I think that's a valuable question to ask. What are some areas where the things that made Jesus mad might show up in our lives? And how can I respond in a Jesus-honoring way? So that's the conversation we had in our house this week. I hope it's a blessing to you. I hope that you continue to engage with Midweek Moment. If you get a chance, let us know that you've been watching these videos. Let us know what you find helpful, and then share this video so that way we can continue to grow the reach. We love you guys, and we hope you have an awesome week.